I'm joined now by Ashley. Hello, Ashley.
Hello. How are you, Andy?
I'm not doing too badly. I like people who like to say hello, because some people it's like, oh, yes, I'm tired, and it's fine, and you look very awake.
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. We've been rehearsing all weekend. Today is actually Tuesday, but yesterday was a big day. And it was a very long rehearsal. We did technical rehearsals, dress rehearsals, a lot of script work and things. And the time now is precisely 11:06 in the morning, and this is where I'm going to be deeply embarrassed, and you mustn't tell anyone. I didn't wake up until half an hour ago.
No, we won't tell a soul. Nobody will know. It will stay between us.
Yes, I'm surprised it's light.
That's fine. I was grabbing a shower 35 minutes ago, don't worry. Now, we're talking, of course, here about Wintershall. It's the Passion of the Christ. I'm looking forward very much to Friday. We're coming down. We're going to take some photos and be in the press pit. But really, let's just work through some of the simple stuff. What is the Passion of the Christ? Let's just start there.
Right. Well, the Passion of the Christ is made up of the last... frankly, the last 3 or 4 days of Jesus' time before and immediately after his crucifixion and his resurrection. So it's a very sort of truncated period of his life. And, of course, the Passion Play tells of his entry into Jerusalem and his trial before the Sanhedrin and Pilate, and his crucifixion, and eventually his resurrection. I think probably most people listening to this are aware of that. But it's also, what we've done is we've taken the concept of the old morality plays, the mystery plays that were, played all around the country in medieval periods before, and indeed even up to this present day, the Coventry mysteries, the York mysteries, and so on. And what we're doing here is as it were, updating them to a contemporary audience. But they are also aimed at people who may know nothing about this story at all. And they're also aimed at people who know it all. The concept behind it is to portray Jesus as he was, a man made flesh, not some floaty Tinkerbell who goes around, holier than thou. Nothing could be further from the truth, in my opinion. And the play deals with not only his situation, for which one has inevitably enormous sympathy, but also for the people around him, no matter who they were. I think one thing to remember is that no one gets out of bed in the morning and thinks, I'm going to be the villain today. People do what they think is the right thing. And I'm very interested in exploring that through the plays. And the thing which sort of, as it were, inspires me, I think, apart from the scripture itself, are the paintings of Bruegel, which many people may know. And Bruegel would paint these the fall of Icarus, for example. And you look carefully at the painting, you can't see Icarus anywhere until you look very carefully and see one feather floating down through the air and a foot disappearing under the waves. Meanwhile, the galleon sails on, the peasant is still ploughing his fields, and so on. The same with his journey of the Magi. You've got to look very carefully to find him. And I like to think when we do this Passion Play, we do it in the middle of Trafalgar Square, one of the busiest areas of the busiest cities in the world, with all life going on around it. Meanwhile, there's a crucifixion going on, and there's a trial going on of this itinerant preacher. And a lot of people just push past, they don't know what's going on, they don't care, they don't know. Apart from the audience, which can be quite large, it can be tens of thousands of people watching it in silence in this square with all life going on around them. And to me, that sort of conjures up what this story is really about. Of course it's about redemption, but it's also about people confronting themselves with something much bigger than them. And but what it is not, and I stress this to the cast and to everyone I speak to, it is not a play where we run religion down people's throats, because Jesus certainly didn't do that. Last thing he did, he was the least religious man you could meet. And so there's no smug smiles and know-it-all looks and, sympathetic whimpers. Not at all. This is a flesh and blood situation. flesh and blood character. And I think to deny Jesus that is an ultimate blasphemy. And so we won't do that. It is really, it's a thriller in a way, with an extremely happy and very intriguing ending.
I remember quite a number of years ago, nearly a decade, I was in a very small town. There was a local dramatic society. They got together and they did a version of The Passion of the Christ in the high street. And I was stood there with a minister of the biggest church in the area. And somebody walked past and said, "Oh, are they still doing this Christian thing then?" And it was fascinating to think that somebody in England, less than a decade ago was saying, "Oh, I thought this Christian thing had died off by now." And the fact there was a thing going on in the high street, unmissable, was a really good statement of, no, it's very much still going on and very much alive today.
Oh, very much so. And I think, we've seen the same. Sometimes we do it elsewhere. We've done it in Guildford High Street a few times. You get people trying to push past and do their shopping. And I think, well, who are these crazy people doing this? But, I think our job is to take the gospel out there. It's not, of course, do it in church and so on. But, I think of doing a visible witness, and using drama, of course, which Jesus did all the time. And look at all his parables. In fact, we have a sequence in the Passion play where someone says, who's our neighbor? And so, and Jesus goes into the Good Samaritans, and all the disciples acted out. It's sort of meta theater. And I say to them, look, we'll perform this because you've done it many times as disciples use it. I bet there are other times in his ministry when someone said, who's our neighbor? And they have to act out the Good Samaritan or the prodigal son or whatever it might be. And so it's a bit of theatre within theatre, if you see what I mean. And why not? I mean, he told stories, and of course, that's the human condition. All of us want to sit around the campfire and be told a story. And that's, of course, what Jesus did. It wasn't all about flashy miracles at all. It was telling people a story. And these stories generally always end up, if you think about it, in a party with people having fun and giving, And so, I mean, this is, we have a lot of support from what I tend to think of as the kind of hierarchical church of all denominations. And I love that. And we're very grateful for it. It's really good. And the Bible Society and so on. It's fantastic. But, our job is really to gently take this story out there and to show people that they can relate to his teachings. It's not about, do this or you're damned. It's the absolute opposite, which is why our plays are ecumenical. People who act in it we have people of faith, people of no faith, people exploring their faith, people of other faiths acting in it and watching it, of course, which is exactly, I believe, what Jesus tells us to do.
Which, I mean, you think about the crucifixion that we read about in Scripture, and what was going on with the crucifixion wasn't just this special one-off thing. This was a normal part of life in that world. And
I say the people who play the soldiers, like the guys who, cast lots for the robe they see lying there. I said, it's they're a bit, it's Friday, so I'm on crucifixion today. I'll see you tomorrow. It's just like the shift. You're on your shift, and of course, I think that there's a lovely story. I think it was Isaac Asimov told it. I keep meaning to look this up. Or Ray Bradbury. It's one of the great science fiction writers. He says there was a time machine, and this guy, it's very expensive. You have to, costs a fortune to go on it. No, not unlike going up in one of Elon Musk's rocket, I would imagine today. So he writes this story where a rich man saves up and decides he wants to go and see the crucifixion. And there's about 6 other people in his party. They do it. And for the first 6 months, they have to train. They have to learn Aramaic. They have to learn how to wear the clothes. They have to eat the diet so they don't smell or look any different. They are completely mingled. Anyway, to get in this time machine, they go back in time. It sets them down in Jerusalem, near the city wall there. And it's beginning to get dark. And they walk up. They know the way to Golgotha. They've got the A to Z. So they walk up there. And as they go, they notice people in their houses preparing for Passover or putting the children to bed, and someone blowing out a candle, people pulling in the washing and just getting on with their lives. And they go up to Golgotha, and there are the three crosses, Jesus in the middle, and he's really in his last moments, and it's beginning to thunder and be unpleasant. And he looks around, and there's only 6 people watching, and it's them. And in other words, this was routine. It was the things that went on. And I don't know why that story moves me so much, but it does. It does. It's still, and I use that as one of our thoughts when we're rehearsing this play. I hope I've probably gone off a bit of a tangent there, but you know, we are dealing with real life situations with real people here. And I think that's what appeals to the audiences that come and see it. I think it is the fact they can relate.
I think that wasn't a tangent. It's a perfect way of actually, I suppose, in a sense, explaining why this is so important, and why it matters. What was your route into working with this production? I mean, you've done all sorts of stuff. I've got a little tiny bio note here. 35 West End shows. You've set up all sorts of things. But what's your routine and passion and interest with this particular performance?
I was. As a child, I was brought up by, Christian parents. We went to church every Sunday, and I always liked it and sang in choirs, all the usual stuff. But my passion has always been the theatre, ever since as long as I can remember. And I know this may sound strange for me, and it's my personal journey in a way. I was lucky enough to get into the theatre and to work at it and so on. But when I was a child, I used to love we lived in Wimbledon. I used to love going to Wimbledon Common, and where the fairground had been when the travelling fair came. And I never liked the fair very much, but I loved looking at the marks that had made in the grass after they'd left. And I loved looking at the lawn at my parents' house and thinking, we could put a fair here, and we could do a play here. As there was something about doing plays outside that intrigued me. And when Peter Hutley, who owned Wintershall, decided in 1991 he wanted to put on a play for Christmas in a barn he just acquired on the top of a hill, he knew I worked in the theatre and I lived virtually next door. And he asked me to help him. And Peter he'd done a bit of writing, but he wouldn't have called himself a writer at all. So we put this sort of Christmas nativity play thing together with a bit of T.S. Eliot and a bit of music and, a Mary, a Joseph and a donkey. I mean, if you've got a donkey, you can sell a ticket to anyone. We all know that. The family, probably 50, 60 people turned up, and it was mince pies, and there was something rather special about it in this old barn with bales of straw, a couple of cows in the thing. And so we did it again the following year, and then the following year, and eventually became quite popular. And I didn't have to persuade him. Peter and I talked about it, and I said, look, you should write more. So he started writing the plays. He wrote the narratives, and he wrote it in rhyming, in couplets and in blank verse. And he really learned the skill of putting stuff down on paper. And from there, we did a passion play outside in Wintershall on Good Friday, as far as I recall, and on the Saturday, which became popular. Then in 1999, we thought we would do the entire life of Christ as a mystery play, as a 5-hour play outside to celebrate the millennium at Wintershall, and we did, and it was popular. A lot of people came, and from there we had to do it again the following year because schools started coming, and then we were asked to do the Passion play up in Guildford High Street, which we did, and then into Trafalgar Square. And our first Trafalgar Square, I don't know, we probably had 1,000 people watching. But then we decided to put a big screen up with all the cameras and everything and make it more accessible. And from that point, it ballooned into quite a big piece. I got involved with it, therefore, because I lived next door to Peter Hutley. But it has become, I don't know if I'd say my life's work, but it's certainly become an absolutely essential part of my life and of all the people who appear in it. And we have people who were in the original in 91, including me. And we have people who've literally joining us this year. We have actors as young as 6 months old and as old as 93 years old.
Wow.
and people in between. And we have an extraordinarily young cast, a lot of young members. A lot of people come from the Guildford School of Acting, who are students there who want to come and do this, which I used to chair that and still involved with it. And they give a tremendous energy to the piece. And as I say, to these plays, we still do the Nativity play. We still do the Life of Christ in June. We play to thousands of people every year, and the plays are taken into schools or parts of the plays, or the schools come to Wintershall. It's an extraordinary, and Lambeth Palace, we do it there, Westminster Abbey. It's just grown into something much, much bigger than any of us thought it would possibly do. And I think it's because it's very simple, and people want to be told a story.
They do, which we see through the parables. I always think of Jesus with the parable of the sower, and I cannot see Jesus just stood there at a lectern reading a script. I see him with children there throwing his arms around, mimicking what the farmer would have been doing to engage people, because all of a sudden we can speak and people can hear, but if they see the actions, it starts to really help those words to root into not just our head, but our heart.
Exactly. We have the old adage in the theatre, which is, don't tell me, show me. Yeah. And that's what Jesus did, in my opinion. Of course, he told stories, but he showed. I think he did demonstrate them. Yes, I do. I think you're bang on. I think he did. Not least because it's hard. If you're outside and you haven't got microphones and things, which he wouldn't have done. He must have had a good voice, I think, to project. But people would have done in those days. So I think that I think from my point of view, I learn something new every year. It won't surprise you when I tell you that this is a very rich text. There's a lot in it. I encourage improvisation during rehearsal, because people will come up with little lines that strike home, and we script it. I'll give you a tiny example. It isn't in this play. I still love this, and I use this a lot in lectures when I give talks to students. We were talking about how some of the elderly Sanhedrin, the Levites and what have you, were very threatened by Jesus' behavior, and they thought that this would cause could cause a rift with the authorities of Rome. And I liken it to young people to saying, look, it's the equivalent of you living in, I don't know, Nazi-occupied Paris. And okay, you have to get along with the occupiers. You've got no choice, but no trouble. If there's trouble, they'll shut it down in a heartbeat. And so they were concerned that we had a scene where the priests were discussing what they could do about this, because if it goes on, the Romans will cancel Passover. They'll say we won't be allowed to go into the temple, and we'll cancel Passover. And we were just doing this in improvisation in rehearsal. And this guy said, I can see him now, this lovely man who'd never acted in his life before. So he came out with a line, said, cancel the Passover. I said, that's terrible. And the other person said, well, I know it is. He said, no, you don't understand. My wife has been in the temple polishing the ornaments for the last week. So there you learn everything. He's worried about them cancelling. He's got to live with his wife. He's going to be extremely angry. And she's been polishing the ornaments, the flower arrangers, and that is so real. That's so human. That's how he looks at it, from the point of view of the fact that, and in Trafalgar Square, you'll see there's a sequence where Jesus turns all the tables over in the temple in a very powerful piece of theatre. He releases a load of pigeons. And of course, that's exciting to see pigeons flying over your head and all the. But to the person who's earning her living selling pigeons for sacrifice, it's a disaster.
Yeah. So
we use that character is threaded throughout the whole play. All she wants to know is, what about my pigeons? And of course, I'm not doing a Life of Brian here, but that again, it's entirely understandable. How can you imagine how angry someone might be if you went into some church and got rid of all their postcards and shit. I love all that human aspect of it, and it makes the greater story, the sacrifice, the price he had to pay, that much more understandable, I think.
If someone's going to come to this on Friday this week in Trafalgar Square here in the UK, and they've got no concept of faith or church or Christianity, what's the one thing that you would hope they might be able to take away from having stood and watched this?
What do I think they're going to take away? Well, first of all, they will recognize that this is about a man and his mates who are not afraid to speak truth unto power. And we could use a bit more of that right now in this world. They will see young people who are fired up with a message of treating people as you'd wish to be treated yourself, who are open to the stranger, to the immigrant, to the dispossessed. They will see him being tried and eventually put to death for political reasons. And then they will see how he overcomes that death. And it's up to them, not to me or to you or to the audience or to the actors. It's up to the individual how they respond to that. You cannot bully people into belief. And if you do, you're damned, in my opinion. I think it is the worst thing you can do. You know, it's like, I can't bear. And I think what they will see from this play is that actions speak louder than words. We know that. Faith without action is dead. You can talk all you like from the pulpit of a church or the lectern. And if I guarantee within a mile of you, there's going to be some single mother somewhere struggling to feed her child. There's going to be some person who isn't, who's sick and alone. There's going to be someone who is here illegally. There's going to be someone locked up in prison who may have to be there. Maybe she should be there. But we are there we've got to take care of those people. That's what Jesus told us to do. It's a hugely radical message, but it's also incredibly simple. And the problem that we have, and this is where I hope the plays help, is that we get tripped up on our intellect. The yes, but. Yeah. And so I hope this play gets rid of the yes, buts, and they will say, actually, what Jesus was doing is absolutely relevant. I'm sure every generation says this, but it's relevant to our epoch.
No, Ashley, thank you. It's been a real privilege just to get some of your heart, especially learning the journey, how you went into it. I love the fact that you were neighbours with somebody. It's like, we could do this. And then we see what we're going to be seeing on Friday. So really grateful for your time. I'm looking forward to coming down. I've never seen this in full. I've only seen very much sort of a local dramatic society doing it, which is very powerful. So I'm looking forward to seeing a much larger production of it. And we'll be down on Friday to come and enjoy that. So,
well, we do it in any weather. It doesn't matter if it rains or snows or hails, we'll do it. So wrap up. You're okay. You're not in a toga. But they'll do it. This cast is incredible. And the team of people who do it, and Charlotte Hutley, Peter's daughter, who's taken it over. Wonderful people. And we have a laugh and we have a marvelous time. And it's pretty amazing to see thousands and thousands of people in absolute silence, moved not by our work or my work, but moved by this story, by the spirit of this story in the middle of London. And so you'll be very welcome there, and so will everyone else who comes.
Thank you, Ashley. It's been a pleasure, really. I think that there is a huge importance of actually not just talking about Jesus, but living that out in action. And I think this is a really good example of more of an ultimate action, I suppose, because it's actually, playing out what has gone on. But I do like the fact that this is in the middle of a busy city on a busy day, and people are going past, which is exactly, as we've said earlier, exactly what would have happened at the cross at Golgotha. People would have just been going out of business. So it's Friday. It's a crucifixion day. It wouldn't mean as much to them as it perhaps is shocking to us, because it was a form of normal punishment and discipline. More at the extreme end, of course, but that's why I like the idea of what it is that this has become, because it's a powerful reminder today, and we need these, and it's good and it's important. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, my dear. You look after yourself, and all the best to everyone who reads and listens to you. You're doing great work.
Thank you, Ashley.
God bless. Take care.
Here at Pure 247 Radio, we've had the privilege of speaking to some amazing people with some amazing stories.
I was about 5k off the coast paddling, and I was watching this storm on the land, and it literally hit a mountain, and rather just going over the top of it, just turned and just came straight at me. You can't stay on the board in that instance, so I literally am jumping off the back of the board. I've got everything tethered down on the board. I'm just holding on to the back of the board.
As I walked in, there was a fight going on the floor. There was a police sergeant sailing over the desk to help with restraining somebody. And the doors were clanging shut, all the big metal gates, and there were alarms going off and radios. And I felt this most enormous peace come over me, because I realised that this is where God wanted me to spend my career behind bars.
It was like a baptism of fire, and it was like the most socially deprived council wards in Britain. And then we were going into schools, and then kids were coming to the gigs, but then knocking on my door at night, and I was out there playing football till 11:30 p.m. at night, 12 o'clock, feeding kids, running youth clubs.
If you've missed an inspiring conversation and want to catch up, or you'd like to revisit a brilliant interview, you can. Our interviews are available on YouTube and podcast, so you can always catch up anytime you like. Search for Pure 247 Radio wherever you get your podcasts, or find our YouTube channel at Pure 247 Radio, or head over to www.pure247radio.org/catch up.